tonight is about obviously building wealth. Whoa, oh, here we go. Here's the first malfunction. I think if people are going to come in late, it's about building wealth through purchasing property and obviously running them on serviced accommodation, which is, my favorite strategy and something that I think everyone should engage in, whether it's at the beginning or whether it's as you build through rent to rent. It depends on more than likely cash situation, but just because you've got no money doesn't necessarily mean you can't not do this strategy, because you can. And it's just a case of building trust with people who have money, showing them why it's a good thing. And I will come on to that at the end as well. So, or towards the end anyway. But plenty of ways to do it, plenty of ways to get stuck into property, and plenty of opportunity out there right now. The market is a bit up and down. It's probably not crashing like everyone thought it was going to be, but there are some good deals kicking around, and the interest rates rising are certainly causing a few problems for some, which obviously is an opportunity for some others. So I think this is the number one strategy for building wealth. Why? Because BRR means you can spin one pot of money or a bit of money through several properties, repeat. And over time, slowly but surely build quite a nice portfolio, which, depending on how you run it, is fairly passive and can kick out some really good cash flow, as well as obviously grow in value and give you quite a nice net worth. And if you ever want to cash it in one day, then you'd be worth a few quid. So it's a great strategy, something that I've deployed since pretty much day one of starting the business, and continue to just try doing more and more of. As you get more and more liquid, obviously you can take on more projects at the same time. And many of you might have seen, obviously I have been advertising for deal sources in the Northeast to come and work with me and find me some deals, and obviously get paid for doing so. And several of you have reached out, and we are working on stuff already. So there is opportunity there. If you are in the Northeast and you do want to get involved, then just drop me a DM on Instagram or something like that afterwards, and we can have a chat. Me personally, I feel like BRRR in its traditional sense, i.e. buy to lets, is not anywhere near as effective as SA. And if I had not combined the two together, there's no way in the world I would have the portfolio size that I've got now that kicks out the amount of cash flow that I've got now. Yes, there has to be a team behind it to run the strategy, but typically my SAs are making about 3.6 times more than if I had them as buy-to-lets. So is that worth putting the team together? Yes. Is it helping me accelerate my growth? Yes. Do I get more cash flow per month? Yes. So for me, it is 100% worth the extra effort to pull this strategy off, rather than just being a bit lazy, kicking it into a traditional tenant and just sitting back and collecting your rent once a month, which is a lot smaller. So one thing to note is the short-term rental market, in my opinion, has changed massively, and something that a lot of people do need to be aware of, because if you continue to listen to a lot of the advice out there, I think you will end up in a bit of a pickle. And I think if you haven't had the experience and got the data to be able to rely on of what works and what doesn't work, then again, you could find yourself in a bit of a tricky situation over the next 12 months. So it is important to keep an eye on what's happening. I'm a big believer in, keeping an eye on people that are ahead of you, that are already doing it and have been doing it for quite some time, because there's signs in what they're doing. I still, look up to certain people and keep an eye on what they're doing, and that certainly helps, influence my decisions. So what's caused the shift? I think there's a huge increase in lower end stock, which has come from various elements, but one, a lot of landlords are shifting into the short-term rental game from the rental game because their interest rates have gone up. more than doubled in most cases. A lot of people had very low rate fixed, and now they're obviously onto much higher interest rates, myself included. Obviously, I started the business end of 2018, early 2019. So typically I put most things on a 3-year fixed, which meant this year a lot of stuff has come off and gone on to higher interest. But thankfully for me, I do run them as short-term rentals, and I am a bit more flexible with what I can do with pricing. So it hasn't really affected the profit line too much, even though most of my mortgages have actually doubled. The increase in obviously rent to renters coming into the market, going on, YouTubes or various crash courses, and not really, I guess, knowing what they're doing in full, but chucking loads of money at it. And they are trying to set up rent-to-rent businesses and so on and so forth with the smaller end stock, and that has increased the supply, which are creating saturation in some areas, which obviously is reducing the occupancy of that type of stock, and that kind of ties into the shiny penny influx, which comes and goes all the time. We had it pre-COVID, it disappeared through COVID, it then came back in the summer. It then disappeared again in the winter when COVID hit again. It comes and goes based on, the market. And when everything's fine and positive, you tend to see that a lot of people go into the strategy. And when things are getting a bit tough, you see people giving keys back and exiting. So we've had another influx after the winter. So we had a winter where everyone's giving keys back. We've had a good summer. Everyone's been getting back into it. We'll see what happens this winter. So that's kind of the ebb and flow of the serviced accommodation supply demand, or supply, should I say. And I think it has become quite oversupplied in a lot of areas for the lower end of the market and the smaller end of the stock. So that's one thing that you need to be mindful of when you are looking to buy property, if you are buying for short-term rental. I'm just going to double check if anybody else is waiting in the waiting room before I move on, because I can't see that when I'm presenting. Yeah, they are. View, admit. Okie dokie. Now we need to go back to the screen. Right, cool. So identifying suitable properties for BRR. For me, they've got to be 15 to 25% below market value. That just helps continue to recycle the money. They need to be able to demonstrate considerable value add. So I think a lot of people get this wrong. They think that they need to do like extensions, loft conversions, garage conversions, all that sort of stuff. You don't. For me, what I mean by that is new kitchen, new bathroom, carpets and decoration, move on to the next project. That should, if you've got 15 to 25% BMV, be enough for a valuer to come out, give you the uplift that you need, get your money back out and go again. For me in this game, speed is key. So you really need to be able to turn these projects quickly. There's no point in being stuck in bridging loans or not getting them cash flowing for months and months and months and months because you're doing big refurbs. My refurb team, maximum, I give them 3 weeks. 3 weeks is sufficient to do wiring, plastering, kitchens, bathrooms, carpets, decoration. That's and if it's going to take longer than that, then maybe I'm doing too much in terms of the project. Even things like if it needs a new roof or roof's going on, you can have that started whilst you're doing the internals and your time all together. But speed is key, because every down moment that you've got where you're not operating as an SA is money down the drain. So you want to try and get the keys and get them set up and cash flowing on the OTAs within maximum 4 weeks. That's my time frame that I work towards. Obviously, you want to double check before you buy any property that they are mortgageable once you've done the work. There are certain properties that are not mortgageable. So you need to make sure that, the last thing you want to do is cash a project up, bridge it or fully cash it, and then go to refinance it and then realize you can't refinance it. You're then stuck into a flip, and that could be 6, 9, 12, God knows how long until you get out of that and get your money back. So you do need to be careful on that front. And you want to be buying properties that attract your SA avatar. So what I mean by that is you really want to find out what your avatar is. Too many people are just going after everything and achieving very little. So you want to be going after a specific avatar, niching down, focusing on them, driving your business towards them, buying properties for that specific type of clientele and kitting them out for that specific clientele. If you do that, you'll make a lot of money, you'll get regularly booked, you'll have great reviews. If you try to please everybody, you're going to be playing in the same market that the majority of people are playing in, which is oversaturated, and you're going to be, at the mercy of the booking channels for the majority of your bookings. And in my opinion, you will suffer over the long term. I don't think it's a very sustainable business model. So you do need to make sure that you are niching down and you know what you're going after. So in terms of actually the BRR process, finding deals, which is kind of, I guess, what tonight's session is about. There's various places you want to look. Obviously, Rightmove is also known as Rightmove, a little T missing out at the top there for the keen eye. So Rightmove, Zoopla, there's, plenty of stock on there. And I think when you are, looking to buy stock, it is, one of the easiest places to look. And you just need to obviously, use the filters, try and, search it down and just, have a look for anything that looks of value or anything that looks like you can modernize and go from there. I put it on here. Step number 2 is kind of look for your granny's house. I say this all the time. For me, obviously I was born in the 80s. So my grand's house was, wooden bathrooms, wooden kitchens and green carpets, funny sort of wallpapers, and that whenever I see that, I know they're old, right? So that for me just jumps out. So that's what I mean by that. And then obviously you have got on Rightmove your property log extension that you can use on Chrome, and that will actually show you when it was listed, how many price reductions it's had or increases, how often they were dropping the price. And that will tell you if you've got a motivated seller or not. And again, you might just be able to nick a good deal by having a look, just purely at that data. So really good tool to add on to your Google Chrome. Other places you can find stock, obviously Facebook, there's plenty of groups, and obviously Marketplace, Gumtree. Anybody advertising on Marketplace or Gumtree that is a private listing, they will more than likely be a very motivated seller. So they are good deals, not as many as obviously on Rightmove, but they are good deals typically, and it does mean you've normally got a motivated seller. Other avenues that you can explore for some really, good below market value deals. Connect with solicitors. If you know any solicitors, anyone that's getting divorced or anyone that's unfortunately passed away, there are 2 types of reasons why people's houses need quick sales, and they at times, just want out. The money's not really the most important thing. So you can, quite often get deals that fit that 15% or more below market value. All you need is, heads up from a solicitor, or, build the relationship and become the go-to person that actually works with the firm. Mortgage brokers, again, they might, they've always got their ear to the ground with people buying property, selling property, and so on. So they could be a good avenue. I know my mortgage broker often comes to me and says, do you want to buy this? Their sales just fallen through. They're desperate for a seller. You can pick it up probably, whatever, 10, 15, 20% below market value because they've already found somewhere to move on to. So I have picked up deals from that avenue in the past. Insurance companies, again, whilst you wouldn't get an abundance of deals, if you can get in with an insurance company, you might be able to know when people have put big claims in, or they have potentially got problems with the houses or anything like that, and that could just be a conversation starter to try and pick something up. And again, auction houses, which typically you'll find on Rightmove or Zoopla, but auction houses do have their own websites as well, and you can find a lot of good deals in auction houses. The only thing you need to be careful of is everyone thinks there's loads of value in auction house deals because they start off very cheap. You get caught in the bidding war before you know it, you've overpaid for the property. So if you are going to bid in an auction, You need to have your price. So you do your research beforehand, you have your price, you know what all your fees are going to be, you know how quickly you've got to transact, and you do not go over that, not even 1 penny. So, you know, you have your out price, and if it goes over that, you're out, and you just stick to that. If not, you get caught up, you end up overpaying, and it ends up tying more money up. So, so that's that. Number 2 is obviously, as I said before, look, your house, look for discounted properties, aren't using that property logger extension. You want to be trying to get on a minimum of 10 viewings a week. I do think if you want to get some serious traction, you do need to be out there. There's a lot of people viewing. You know, I have an army of people kind of out there looking for properties all the time. You know, and it's not like we're picking up as many as I would like. So it shows you how competitive it is. There's a lot of investors in the game. There's a lot of people going after the same stock. So you've got to be quick. You've got to get your offers in quick, and you need to be viewing a lot to get something. Nothing comes for free. And, you know, if you're not prepared to put the effort in, put the yards in, stomping and doing the viewings and pricing things up, you're not going to get anything out of it. Personally, I think it should be double that number. But when I sort of say 20, 25 a week, which is what I was doing when I first started, between rent to rent and purchasing, it scares people off. But I think if you do 10 a week, you're going to get some good traction, and you should be able to, you know, pick up at least 1, if not 2 deals per month. You want to cost up the refurbs, but you don't want anything ideally more than 20k. Now, this does depend where you are based. Obviously, refurbs down in London are going to be a lot more expensive than the Northeast. I invested in the Northeast, so my figures are based on that. You know, however, I am going to show you something a bit later on with regards to opportunity cost. But in an ideal world, you want to be trying to stick around somewhere on that 20k mark for your refurb. And that should then help you, you know, pick up enough deals that are also not going to get too much money tied up. You always want to make an offer. So even if you don't want the property, even if it's not in the right location, just make an offer. Even if it's 50% below market value or 45, it doesn't matter. You know, make an offer, because you then get registered on the system. So if a deal falls through, they'll ring you back up and say, hey, this has fallen through. But also it just shows the agency that you are keen, you're there to buy, you're ready to buy, and you just never know. I have actually done this before, and I remember I was in Val d'Isere skiing, and I got a phone call and said, oh, the vendors willing to accept your offer. And I was like, what property? Can't even remember. And they told me what property. I was like, you're gonna have to explain which. And it was basically about 50% below market value, because I didn't want it. It wasn't in the best area. And I, you know, obviously just threw my offer in, and they had a sale fall through, so they needed it out. And sure enough, it was a probate property, so you know, they just needed someone to take it. So I got a very good deal on that, refinanced out, cash out refinance, used the cash to buy more properties. So, you know, it served a purpose, even though I didn't really want the property. Always follow up. I think a lot of deals do fall through. A lot of deals you may not get your first offer accepted, but just keep checking every week. Is it still live? Is it still live? If it is, go back to the agent. I'm still here. I've still got my money on the table. You know, whenever they're ready to proceed. Every week that goes by, the more motivated that seller's going to be to take your offer. So just all you got to do is stay in there. Just keep contacting, have a good follow-up process, and you will get plenty of deals. This goes for rent to rent as well as, you know, just straightforward buy, refurbish, refinance. Let me just quickly check if anybody else has come in. Nope, we're all good. So it looks like everyone's in. Cool. So just to give you an idea, this is one of our projects that we did last year, I think it was. So as you can see, sort of the top line is my granny's house, as I sort of say, you know, brown carpets, blue bathrooms, you know, just horrible looking things. And then we've got, you know, from old to new, we've got obviously new bathroom, new kitchen put in there, carpets, decoration, and then we're away. You know, so nice house for us. Does very well for us on Airbnb, or not really Airbnb, that one, but more the direct booking website, but you get the picture. So I actually, for anyone that does know me, I actually hate Airbnb. I think they're a really shit company, and they don't really have the hosts at the forefront of their minds. But at the same time, if you haven't started yet, Airbnb is a great place to start. But you want to try and move away from it as soon as possible by getting your own direct bookings. But that will take time. Listen, you know, my First booking was from Airbnb. For my first, year or so, I was definitely very heavily Airbnb, but have transitioned away from it. Not completely, but a good large percentage of it is direct now, and very few comes from the actual booking channels for the right properties. So you want to make sure that you are selecting the right purchaser for your avatar, as I mentioned before. So make sure that whatever you are going after, if you want to do, holiday cottages in the Lake District, then obviously, and your avatar is, the traveler who wants to bring their family for a week at a time, or maybe you might want to do like romantic weekends away, whatever it might be. You need to buy the property that is right for that avatar, kit it out for that avatar, and then just market for that avatar, and you will end up getting very well booked, repeat business, super reviews, and everything in between. But if you buy a property and you're trying to do contractors, you're trying to do tourism, you're trying to do romantic weekends, you're trying to do families, you're going to struggle because you're playing to too many people. You think that you're going to be better off because you're sort of appealing to more people, but what you're not doing is maximizing the potential of one property from one type of avatar. Have a look at your competition, see what they are, how they're designing their properties, how they're pricing their properties, and also what their occupancy is. And there's some, good tools which I'll come on to in a bit to do that. But, you want to see what you're going to be up against, and you want to make sure that you have the budget to be able to compete, if not outdo. And, you always want to try and be better. And I think everybody does keep leveling their games up on the interior design. So you want to just make sure you are ahead of the game as much as you can be. As I mentioned before, the benefits of using Airbnb over traditional long-term, 3 times more profit, which means you can actually buy more assets quicker because you're going to get more cash flow into your bank each and every month, which obviously builds your pot. And then it means you can then go and buy more property, which, as I said earlier at the start, that was one of the reasons why, definitely I've got the portfolio size I've got now, and I wouldn't have that if I had just gone down the traditional buy-to-let route. It does give you more flexibility. So if you want to close your property down, you can. If you don't want to have any guests, you can. Similarly, you're never, not going to get paid if you've got a tenant who decides, like I've had in the past, wants to live in your property and not pay. It can be very hard to get them out, and it costs you a lot of money. With guests, you just basically kick them out. If they do want to be awkward, you send the security team down and they can rip them out. And worst case scenario, you can get the police to go down if need be. So there are ways and means to make sure that you're limited damage on the financials, or you limit your damage on the financials should you, come across anyone that doesn't want to pay, whereas you can't do that with tenants. I always say there's no voids in short-term rental, and, people do say, well, there are certain times when you are empty, and of course there are, but typically every single month you are going to be getting some form of money in. Whether it's a little bit or a lot, you are getting revenue each and every month. And over a 12-month period, you make substantially more than most buy-to-let options. You can pay less tax, depending on how you set up. There is no Section 24 if you're doing it personal names. You can have capital allowance claims. There's various other things that you can do with operating out of a limited company. So, there are tax benefits to this over your traditional long-term. Quick, I don't want to dive too much into the operations on tonight's call. I kind of want to try and keep it as much deal sourcing as we can, but a couple of tips for successful Airbnb management. Have a brand from day one and let everyone know what that brand stands for. Have good systems and processes. You want to automate as much as you can. I think right now we run something like 30,000 zaps a month. For anyone that doesn't know what zaps are, it's through Zapier, which is a great tool, which if you do know what that is, you'll know that's a lot of zaps, which kind of shows you how automated the business is, and how much time that will be saving us with without needing to employ employees and all that sort of stuff. So you can keep your costs down for as long as you can, you should keep your costs down for as long as you can. I think what I do see is a lot of people get into Airbnb. Obviously, they don't like the operation side of it. I don't think anyone really does enjoy hospitality too much. It can be quite painful and thankful. thankless task at times, but it is a necessary evil to run this type of business. So you want to, but what I do see is people like jumping for VAs and this and that and the other, and I've done the same. And I had far too many staff at one point. But all that happens there is you end up paying all your profit out in salaries, and you start making very little yourself. So keep your costs down for as long as you can. Read your reviews, discover and tweak is what I say. So find out what's going on in your business, and then try and make the tweaks. Your customers are the best people to listen to, and we are in a review-based game, so it is very easy to get feedback on what's good and what's not so good, and then obviously make the changes. And then play strong out the gate with your pricing. Play the algorithms. Sometimes go a bit cheap just to get some bookings and get the algorithms going, and then it will help you in the future, and you can then bump your prices back up as well. So any questions at this stage, just bang them in the chat, and I will come onto them. But yeah, if you can just bang them in, I think it's good to just put your questions in whilst this is going on, because you might think, I'll ask that later on and then forget. So just get it in the chat if you do have one. Private investor funds. So I kind of mentioned this before, and if anyone watches any of my social media videos, you'll know that I do champion sort of that I have built most of my portfolio actually using very little of my own money. As you gain trust and credibility with people, you can borrow money. There's plenty of people out there who don't have the experience and will work with somebody who does, because they're lazy and they just want to return on their money. And I mean, where I am sat right now, obviously in Dubai, is the epitome of lazy people with lots of money. I mean, some people here are not even bothered if they have tenants, because they've just got that much money. They just probably see that as more of a hassle to actually get cash flow, but they just are parking their money in buildings to get the equity growth because they've got that much money. So there's plenty of people out there with money who need to get some sort of return on it, and you can be their best friend and create a win-win situation. A lot of people who have money have very little motivation to do new things, but at the same time, they will always want to try and make more money. So if there's an easy option for them that's safe, then they are more than likely open to at least a discussion, and that's exactly what we can do. The banks are still offering nothing, even though interest rates are rising. It's still, hardly worth putting any money in your bank. And as I said earlier, property is a safe bet. Crypto's not, stocks are not, shares are not, so there's many things that can give you a good return, but they are not as safe as property. And I think we all know property over time does go up in value, as well as worst case scenario, there is some bricks and mortars and a title deed on offer should shit hit the fan and something go wrong with the project. So there's ways to protect your investor, which is what I think really opens up the conversation and the door to be able to get investor money. You've got to build relationships. It's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to leave this call, go and speak to 10 people, tell them what you're doing, and all of a sudden they go, there's £500,000. That's not going to happen. You're going to have to build relationships. I do say start with your friends and your family and in those side connections, people that already know you, because there is almost an element of trust there, even though my mum was probably the hardest one to crack. But, she's just very risk averse. So I just had to, slowly but surely, nicely show her, demonstrate, build the trust in a different way to some of the other investors who, are a bit more, I just want to crack on and get started. Tell everyone what you do. You can do it in the third person as well. So you don't always have to be like, I'm looking for money. Have you got anything? You can just be like, telling people what you're doing, how your projects work, how BRR works, how you use investors' money, and then just, the good old saying, do you know anybody? That can be used in many avenues within our business, whether it's to get more guests or whether it's to get more money. And, do you know anyone? Or if you do know anyone, I'd be happy to pay you a connection fee or however you want to spin it. But what you're really saying to them is, would you like to, have you got the money? Don't expect money overnight. Kind of mentioned that before. When you are securing private funding for BRR, you need an investors pack. So the investors pack needs to kind of detail what the project is, what the costs of the project are, when you need the money, at what stages, what interest you're going to give them, how long's the project going on for, What else you're gonna pictures ideally, what the revalue is, comparables to show that that revalue is realistic, how you're going to get their money out, what happens if the money gets stuck, all these sort of things you want to cover off in an investor pack. You typically want to offer more interest than they would get, say, at a bank or even with a long-term loan note or something like that. So somewhere in the region of probably 10%, 8 to 12%. I have seen higher. I have paid higher, especially at the beginning. But somewhere around that 8 to 12% mark will more than likely attract most private investors, and and be able to get you. And don't be afraid to leverage experience. So a lot of people think that they can't get money because they haven't done a deal themselves, or they have no experience in property, so why would someone lend them money? And that is a good question. But what you can do is you could JV with someone that has got experience, so it becomes a win for the JV partner because they get maybe a slice of the cake. It becomes a win for you because you get to do a project alongside someone that is experienced. Although you might be giving a bit of the percentage away, but you're going to get almost mentor, and through the project they'll also make sure that you're not going to make the costly mistakes that you would make doing it on your own as it first time. And then for your investor, they're going to know that it's secure because you're working with someone experienced, so you can make it like 3 parties rather than just 2. For those that are on, certainly my mentorships, they get to leverage with me through their investors, and and we look to do things, and they get to utilize my experience and use my name and bring that to the table to win deals over. And that's one of the benefits of working with an experienced mentor. It's not just about the coaching and the day-to-day and this and that and the other. It is being able to leverage their experience to potentially get you more somewhere else, and also working together on certain deals and splitting it however suits. So that is something to consider if you are new into the game, as to why you might want to invest into something or someone to be able to gain their experience to get something else by utilizing themselves. One of the biggest things that I do look at and is constantly changing. I don't like to leave that much money in deals, I'll be honest, because it slows you down, especially at the beginning. I never used to leave more than probably $7,000 in a deal. I think the game has changed slightly, especially for me, because of the type of stock that I'm going for. But what you want to do is you should know what your opportunity cost is. So, this is just one of my opportunity cost calculators. What I mean by that is you want to know what sort of percentage of deals you are taking on from your viewings. And so you also want to know, out of how many viewings, what sort of percentage is 10K left in, 20K left in, 30K left in. And then you'll find your sweet spot in that given time period. So in this example, obviously the sweet spot's 20K left in. Obviously, if we go to 30K left in, then we add another sort of 30% of deals. So between under 30K, you're going to get about 50% of the viewings that you're going on are going to be right, and therefore you're increasing your chances of getting an offer. Now, leaving that type of money in can obviously probably lock you out the game for a while, or certainly put a dent in the pot, in the liquidity pot that you've got. So what you have to do is weigh up the cost of, okay, well, if I only want to leave 10K in, how many deals a year am I going to get? Because if you're only going to get one or half a deal a year by leaving 10K in and trying to get the perfect deal, then that's only going to spit out, a tiny bit of cash flow once a year. And you're not really going to build your portfolio very quickly. Whereas if you're going after the right stock, like the stock that I go after will bring, I would like to think somewhere between 40 and 50K revenue per year. So that means I can get my money back quite quickly if I can get the deals on board. So I'm more than willing to leave a bit more money in the deal because I know that the cash flow comes quicker, and therefore I can take on more deals. So I can therefore have the cash flow to then top the pot back up rather than sitting on the sidelines waiting for the perfect deal. And I think this is one thing that, you know, I've definitely struggled with in the past and been a bit too strict on. But when you look at your data and you analyze your data, you know what your optimum is, and then ultimately you go, right, a bit like going to the auction, you go, that's how much I'm prepared to leave in, because I know if I do that, I can spin X amount of money however many times over the year, and it means I'm going to generate X amount of cash flow. So whilst I might not be getting the money out from the refinance, I'm going to get paid the money back quite quickly from the cash flow because I'll have active units, versus waiting for the perfect deal to get all my money back out, but then having no active units for quite a long period of time, money sat in the bank doing nothing. So you've got to work out what your opportunity cost is as you've gone through your analysis and your portfolio and your viewings, and then you make decisions on that. And this might be a conversation that you're having with your investor as well, because the game has changed slightly. And, you know, I do think you need to leave more money in the deals now to be able to get the deals over the line, because you know, it is quite competitive. It's not always good, so I do like to you know, not just trumpet all the good things. I think it is good to be aware of the risks and be aware of the problems that you will face. It's not a case of you might face, you will face them. You will get down valuations, especially at the beginning, because you'll probably you don't know how to effectively analyze a deal, and you've got no experience in actually getting a refinance, especially at the beginning if you've not done a deal. So how do you know how it works? How do you know what the surveyors are looking at? Until you meet these people and talk to them, you don't really know how they're thinking. But once you do, and also even just going through mortgage applications and things like that, and speaking to your mortgage brokers, you understand what they're looking for and how they've valued things. You know, so you will get down valuations. You will get project overspends, because no one seems to be able to price up a project, even builders, which does surprise me considering they're meant to be the experienced ones. You will have project overruns. So I mentioned I want 3 weeks, but it might turn to 5 weeks. You know, that's going to mean that you're paying more finance costs because you're going to refinance later than you would typically have wanted to. You can lose money. I do think it's rare, and especially if you are educated and you are working with someone who's experienced, who keeps you on the straight and narrow. You know, in my sort of one-to-one sessions with mentees in the sort of VIP community, you know, we do deal clinics where we actually, you know, look at deals, you know, drill down on the figures, and I'll give my opinion whether they should do it or not do it. Whether they take it or not is up to them, but you know, most of them do because they trust me. You know, and having that is valuable, really, because you can lose money by getting into the wrong deals. You know, and I have seen it. Obviously, if you are using investor money, you will get investor money trapped at some point. So you do need to have a plan B for how you're going to get out of that, because, you know, if your investor says, yeah, I'll lend you some money for 6 months, but I want it back in full, you do your deck and it looks like it's a full cash out deal, you get a down valuation, you overspend on your project, all of a sudden you've tied up 30 grand out of, let's just say for argument's sake, they're 100 grand. They're now, you know, 30% light of the money that they thought they were getting back. So what do you do next? You know, you need to have solutions. You will get bad guests just coming on the operational side. There's no doubt about it. Just like you'll get bad tenants if you're going on the buy-to-let side. You've got to expect that, and it will cost you money. But, you know, how you deal with that with systems, processes, verifications, deposits, all that sort of stuff will limit the damage. So the good ones that are on top of it won't have too much damage, and obviously the ones that have no idea and trying to wing it will have a lot more financial damage. As I say all the time, like in property, you're paying for it. You either pay for it in your education up front, or you pay for it in your mistakes, because it is a costly game. So, you know, those that invest in their education, work with mentors, work with, you know, go through programs, coaches, courses, all that sort of stuff. They're getting educated. They make much less financial mistakes on the day-to-day, whereas the ones that wing it, they will make a lot more costly mistakes, and they will pay for it in that way rather than actually paying for the education up front. So either way, you're going to pay for it. You just got to choose which way you want to do it. So obviously your potential solutions to those problems above are, you can obviously sell the property, but it can take a bit of time. You can offer the title deed up to the investor so they actually own the property until the time that the funds are paid back. Obviously you've got verification tools for your short-term rental side of things to try and stir out as many bad guests as possible. And you can get malicious damage insurance for both buy-to-lets and also for short-term rentals as well. Obviously they come at a premium, but if you are worried about that, you can obviously insure yourself. Budgeting for SA. So budgeting for your projects, choose low cost areas. I think there's plenty of properties in great areas that you can make a lot of money from, and you don't necessarily need to be spending fortunes to acquire those properties. Get several builders quotes. Take a video of the property and just send it to 3 or 4. You don't necessarily need to get them out to the property. They might want to come out, but you could ask them for just an indicative quote based on a video, as long as the video is detailed enough. Rightmove Nearly Sold will give you an idea of what the valuation is going to be, and you can then run pound per square foot analysis based on other properties that have sold, looking at their floor plans, things like that, and working out what the pound per square foot is, and then obviously just times it off of your square footage, and then ultimately you should get a rough idea of the valuation. But that being said, it doesn't always play out that way. In terms of Airbnb and seeing what your cash flow is going to be, you can use tools like AirDNA. I know there's some other alternatives out there, but that is the one that I use for now. I'm not so keen on their new updates, so unless I get my head around it, I might look to cancel it and switch. But the data is pretty good on it. You can also do it the old sort of manual, old-fashioned way. Anybody that's been through any of my programs or video programs will have seen probably one of the early videos where I analyze deals just by looking at Airbnb calendars, Booking.com, all that sort of stuff, and doing it the old manual way. So that is still an effective way to find out whether there's going to be a return on your investment and what the cash flow could be. And then demonstrating the financial feasibility. So I think again, I've got my deal analyzer, which I put together many years ago. It's all spreadsheet formula, and I just punch the figures in there, and it just spits out whether I've got a traffic light system, red, green, orange, and it just basically takes the emotion out of the investment and just says, yes, make this offer, no, make that offer, or it needs to be this price to make it work. That saves me so much time and hassle. And either buy one or get hold of one or create one yourself if you got it right in formula. Just you want to be making sure that you're not cutting corners on analyzing the figures properly because you're tired or you just can't be bothered because you've seen so many properties, whatever. It also, like the way I've structured mine is it's like I think I do have actually. The way I've structured mine is like it's like a follow-up tool as well. So, we talked earlier about the follow-up. Mine goes in columns, so I can then basically go, right, offer made, rejected, accepted, pending, whatever, and we just go back. The estate agent's details there, or the vendor's details, we give them a ring, flash them a text, whatever it might be, and just, constantly following up. So, these type of tools, they're not that expensive, but they do, massively give you so much time back. They're very reliable. Obviously, mine's got a traffic light system, so it's just red, green, or orange to go. And the main thing is it takes the emotion out of the decisions. It just keeps it very logical with figures in black and white, which ultimately means that you can make more profit. So that in itself is for me was worth. I've said it a million times on podcasts and on webinars. Learning how to write spreadsheet formula has been one of possibly the best skill sets I think any business owner can do. And there's plenty of courses on like udemy.com and things like that for like 25 quid that can give you the basics. And then over time, you just get better at it by, Googling whatever you're trying to do on YouTube, and it'll give you a little video and then you learn. That's kind of how I did it. But it's really gold for, I think, property investors who need to know numbers, who need to be able to analyze data for Airbnb hosts to, need to analyze bookings, need to know what their direct booking percentages are on certain properties, on the whole portfolio, on certain elements of your portfolio. You want to know what your average length of stay is, what your average booking time is. And yeah, there's all these different types of softwares and tools that can give you, but I don't think anything's better than being able to pull all your data together, figure it all out, look at your profitability, look at your profit and loss, pull things out of your accountancy software. So if you can take anything away tonight, is go and do a spreadsheet formula course, and improve your skill sets on that. So that is pretty much it. I know it's been a bit of a whirlwind and a quick run through. I'm sure there'll be questions if anybody does have any questions. Let me just dive back into here. If you do have questions, just pop them in the chat, and I'll dive onto them. Just while maybe you are typing questions out, I will just run through a few things. So number one, I do have some space in obviously one of the VIP programs that we have put together and sort of relaunched a new group, which is lifetime access. So if anybody is interested in furthering their knowledge, getting around good people, and having a bit of one-to-one support, then just drop me a DM on either Facebook or on Instagram, and then we can discuss that. I mentioned earlier I am looking for deal sources in the Northeast, so if people do want to look at sourcing some deals for me for a fee, then again reach out to me, and we can have a chat, and we can kind of pick things up from there. And that's about it for me, I think, on the pitching side. I'd just like to tell people what we're doing anyway. But there is one other thing. So there's been a lot of questions in my inbox lately about obviously the new fire regulations coming into serviced accommodation. I've actually just done a YouTube video on that today, so my team will be editing that up, and that should be live on my channel within the next few days. So you can then hopefully get all the information you need from that. So questions, only got one, I think. Oh, hold on. Regarding alternatives to returning fixed term finance private investors, what do you suggest? Yeah, I think I kind of answered that in the thing. How do you go about analyzing areas and properties with few comparables in the area? So typically you'll go like quarter mile out, half a mile out, especially on things like Rightmove. I could try to really keep it just to the street if I can, and also just to the property type. So get rid of terraced houses and semis if you're analysing an apartment, for example, and get rid of apartments if you're analysing houses. So that's that's typically how I do it. I think you do have other things like property data is obviously it's a paid tool. It's okay. I think I've used it in the past, and I think sometimes the data is not. It gives some funky like pound per square foot values and things like that out, because at the same time that's just picking from a sample of data with like recently solds and things like that. So I think in the main, I've not been a million miles away. Worst case scenario, if you cannot find a comparable, ring 3 or 4 estate agents.
Yeah. Sorry, Ryan, I probably wasn't clear enough on that. Thanks for all that. But I was also meaning kind of in terms of the SA exit. So say if it's in an area, where, I mean, the classic Newcastle city centre has loads, all the city centres have loads, but if it's a little bit further out and it's a little bit more challenging to see how it might do as an SA there, is it mainly just kind of thinking, is it because you've got, your large team that drive the direct bookings a bit more readily than, for example, I do? Is that what gives you the confidence to invest in those areas, for example, the cheaper areas?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I mean, obviously, AirDNA, you can put postcodes in and it'll spit out some data. Having a large portfolio in a certain area definitely does help, because you've got the data there. I am very analytical. I do look at data. I'm always downloading reports from this, that, and the other, and analyzing the data. So Yes, I've got the data, so that definitely does help. I think if you haven't got the data, you've got to try and, I guess, like I did in the beginning, you've just got to make a good decision, right? So, one way or another, you got to think, am I going to take the risk or not take the risk? And, that is what I guess makes entrepreneurs and doesn't make entrepreneurs, because, those that are willing to take the risk, it might pay off. And, those that are fearful and sit on the sidelines, they might have been passing on an opportunity that could have actually done very well for them. Similarly, you can pass and you might have saved yourself a fortune, and you can take a risk and you might blow. So I think, at the end of the day, property investing is a risk. The thing I think about, if I'm unsure of an area, I'll have a look at the buy to let viability of it, or the flip viability of it, because then you can go, okay, well, what's my plan B and what's my plan C? And worst case scenario, you can flip it to one of them. Not sure. I've actually only probably flipped the other way, which is from that strategy to serviced accommodation. I don't think I've ever flipped back from an SA, and I've been very surprised by, I know, was it last summer or a couple of summers ago, I just bought a house in literally the middle of nowhere, what I thought, like outskirts of Durham, and we just finished it, and I had some furniture in the storage, and it was coming up to summer, so I just sort of said to the team, just bang some furniture in there and let's run it as an SA for now and just see what's what. It's been booked nearly every bloody month since, and then I did the same this summer. The tenant I was talking about, who didn't pay rent for quite some time, I managed to get him evicted through bailiffs eventually. Put the house up for sale because I didn't really want it, didn't think it was a good enough area for SA, didn't really do much, hadn't had many bites on the sale, it was sat empty, mortgage has gone up on it. So again, summer's come round as I just banged some furniture in. Again, I think that did 2,700 quid revenue last month. It's like literally in the middle of nowhere in bloody Stanley, just so these things surprise you, but I think it comes down to, there's absolutely, you could go on AirDNA and what have you and run that property through, and there's no data for it at all. But what's the worst case scenario is I could rent it, I can sell it, or I actually make some money from it. And I think with owning property, you've got so much more margin to play with than rent to rent. Like, I probably wouldn't go and rent a load of property in Stanley, even though I have now got that data, because I think there is enough margin in it to be able to make it work. Although saying that, it wouldn't stop me now buying more property that way and setting more up. And then if the data then spits out, once you've got several on the go in that area, then okay, I might say, okay, well, we can do rent to rent there because it would work. So I think again, it comes back to either having the experience yourself or getting around someone who has got the experience and being able to, give you the information and give you the guidance. I think it is important. So
cool. It's really helpful. Thanks.
No bother. Do have a few more questions. What do you mean by properties not being mortgageable? So there are certain properties out there that aren't mortgageable. They might have only a few years left to run on the lease. Most mortgage brokers or most mortgage lenders will want a minimum of 30 years on the lease by the time the mortgage has come to an end. So if you're getting a 30-year mortgage, you're going to need at least 60 years on the lease. If not, it'd be unmortgageable unless you extend the lease, which can be, I know I paid for one last year and I think it cost me £46,000 just to extend the lease. So, it can be quite a costly exercise. There's many other reasons. It might have certain, things underneath it, coal mine shafts. It could have had movement in the property. There's many reasons that can make properties unmortgageable. You'll typically find them in the auctions, and it'll have a big stamp that says cash buyer only. That typically means there's a problem getting a mortgage on it. So you just got to be aware, because obviously you don't want to be, getting into something that you've got to fully dump all your cash into. Because again, if you've watched any of my social media videos, you'll understand why I'm a big fan of leverage and debt to be able to create cash flow. And you don't want to be, you want to be putting as little as possible into these deals and using your cash to spin over and over again. Why are low cost areas better to choose for BRR? I think, in my opinion, is obviously they take less money, less capital to get going. And certainly for the short-term rental side of things, the ADR variance isn't that much different to, say, London, for example. Like, you're going to pay a hell of a lot more money to do a BRR in London than you are in, say, Newcastle. But you're not actually going to get that much more of a nightly rate in London than you are in Newcastle. So for me, it means I can probably get 3 or 4 projects for the price of one in London. I can get 3 or 4 months of cash flow, which would outweigh the one in London. So I just think there's ways and means to do things, and also, I guess, lower, if you think about it, like a 15% below market value on £100,000 property is only 15 grand. Now, if you're negotiating 15 grand off a property, it doesn't sound that much in the grand scheme of things. Whereas, if you're negotiating, a £200,000 property, and obviously, sorry, it'd be more than that. Let's say a £400,000 property, and you're wanting 20% off the price. Well, that's 80 grand. Now that sounds a much bigger number. So when you're going to a vendor saying, I want 80 grand off your property, they're going to be a bit like, absolutely no chance. Whereas 15 grand or 10 grand or 11 grand, it doesn't sound that much money. But in the grand scheme of things on the refinance side for us, it hits that 15 to 25% or more percentage BMV, which allows us to refinance back out. And then we can get most of our money back out and we go again. Also, you're going to get smaller down valuations. So let's say you think it was worth 135, a valuer might come out and value it at 125 or 130. Whereas on your 400 grand, you might say, oh, well, I thought it was going to be 470. A valuer could come out and only value it at like 370 or 390. So again, it might just tie up some more money. So that's just my experience. I've never invested in London, so I'm not going to, diss it altogether. But having worked with, hundreds, if not thousands of people over the years, with buying properties and renting and, operating and things like that, that's just kind of the general consensus that I get from the people that do invest down south versus kind of what I've been doing up north. So hopefully that helps.
Because I'm based in Essex, or not East London, Essex. I've got, like I said, property in Sheffield that I've been doing as well. But yeah, it's just more where you want your SA to be in relation to, obviously, you don't want to be in like a dodgy area. But yeah, it's just finding out, like I said, the right low cost area.
Again, it comes back to your avatar. Like, at the end of the day, if you want to do, luxury SAs, like large luxury SAs, which I think is a great model. You could find an old country manor in the middle of probably Essex. You could buy it for £1 million, and you could probably charge 20 grand a weekend if you kit it out properly. Do you know what I mean? So it's not always one way or the other. There's various ways to do it, and it depends who you want to have in your house and what your house kit. However, having said that, you can buy a 5-bedroom house in the northeast for 250 grand. You can spend 50 grand kitting it out, and you can make it a luxury model for high net worths, and you can be pulling in 10 to 15 grand a month from that. So it's kind of like, whereas, it's just totally, it depends on you really where you want to be. And also I do think if you can, invest on your doorstep as much as you can, because it just makes sense. You're there, you can get on the viewings, you can, touch the properties. I'm not a massive fan of external deal sources to an extent, especially on rent to rent. But I think even the purchasing side, unless you are really, really, really experienced and able to rip a deal apart and know whether it's good for you or not, then I think deal sources are probably, well, not to be trusted is probably the word I want to use, but without sounding too harsh. I think there's few and far between good deal sources out there who, actually care about the client's back pocket and don't just want that fee. I see it time and time again with deals. And I think when you're not on your doorstep, you do end up having to go to deal sources naturally, or if I hear the order, I'm too busy with work, so I can't get out and do the viewings myself. But I just think at the beginning, until you've got a lot of experience behind you, you really want to be finding your own deals, analyzing them yourself, getting them checked over by someone who's got experience, and just making sure that you're doing the right thing. Obviously, you can do that with source deals, but if you are relying on a deal sourcer to give you the full facts, I think you're a bit naive. I think unless you're going to maybe go and second face and touch the property, then which is what we do, then that's maybe not a bad strategy, but you just gotta. I just think you should try and operate on your own doorstep where you can. So try and find a strategy that works for your doorstep, basically.
Yeah. Cheers.
Do you set the service let property as a commercial premises for council? Yes. You have to is the honest answer. So it needs to be on business rates. It is a business. So you should be on business rates. So you just speak to the BOA and you get that applied for and get it sorted. Do you have HMOs that you've turned? Yes, I do. Or I did. So yeah, I kind of mentioned before, I've kind of gone that way and never come back. So I used to have quite a few HMOs, I'll be honest with you, especially the first probably 2 years of operating. I bought a few specifically for HMOs, turned them into HMOs, and then I just don't like tenants. I really don't. I think whilst guests, yes, give you hassle, it's short-term hassle. It goes away very quickly. I've had a couple of bad experiences with tenants. It cost me a lot of money, and personally, I think the UK is going the wrong way in terms of that side of things, and I think there's more and more regulation around landlords, making it harder to get people out your houses. And I think when we were stood in court and the judge turned around and said, you might own the home, but it's actually his home, I think it shows you exactly where the mindset of the courts is going, as well as the government. So I don't want to get too political, but for me, I've always liked the flexibility and the security of the short-term rental, of being able to say, I want money up front, or you're not going in. And if you don't leave, I'm kicking you out and you can't do anything about it. And for me, that is something that sits well with me and doesn't with the tenant side of things. It's the same here. Obviously, it's not that flexible here. You are pretty much a tenant for life here unless you decide otherwise, which drives a lot of landlords to say, well, I'd rather do holiday homes because you've got that flexibility, even if they're going to earn a bit less. So it might surprise you, but there are certain areas here where you will get more rent than you will on as a short-term rental, especially at the minute with the rents flying up. So that's it really. But yeah, I would, and on that note, they make more money as SAs, large SAs, than they did when they were HMOs. So it's not only a good move for the flexibility and all that, it's a good move financially for me, and it's very much formed part of now my model going forward. And I think one thing that I kind of talk on my YouTube video about the fire regulations that are coming in. I've always thought this was going to happen. So whenever I have been doing refurbs, I've just been pretty much following the HMO guidelines, fire doors, interconnected smoke alarms, all that sort of stuff. And, sure enough, the fire regulations are coming out now for SAs, and it's, you must have fire doors, you must have your smoke alarms, you must have your emergency lighting, so future-proofing your houses when you are doing your refurbs. Maybe you might be spending a bit more money now, but you're definitely going to make that back in the future, because there's going to be a lot of people now with SAs who are going to have to go back in, close them down, put the fire doors on. We don't have to do any of that because we've already done it. So we can stay operational. We don't suffer any losses on that front. So on and so forth. Rent and that question was coming. So yeah, we will do it on the rent to rents. I don't do it at the start, I'll be honest. With rent to rents, try and I mean, when I first started, I probably took on far too much in terms of projects, spending too much money on other people's properties. But you learn from your own mistakes, and you learn from your costly mistakes even more. But now, if the most I'll do on a rent-to-rent now is carpets, probably, unless I won't even. I used to do, you know, rent-free periods in exchange for me doing the work, but I can't even be bothered with that now. You know, I'd rather just say, like, you do the work and just give us the keys when you're ready, but this is how I need it. You know, so that probably comes with experience and also not as much of a desperate need for the money. I think at the beginning, if you need to do that to get a deal and the deal's going to work, do it. Obviously, that's why I did it at the beginning, because I wanted another unit and I needed the money. So, you know, you do it. But as you, I guess, become more financially free, then those type of decisions become, I don't know what the word is, but, you know, less important, I guess. And you just sort of say, well, that I don't need that project. I'll go and find another deal that suits, you know, if need be. I'm not as panicked to have that deal, because, you know, I know there's plenty of deals out there. And as you get more and more established as a brand, obviously more and more landlords want to work with you as well. So it does become a bit easier to pick deals up. So, but yeah, I think going forward, obviously for the rent-to-rents, we do need to obviously start having a look at the portfolio and, you know, having a look at what's going to need doing. And then obviously we're going to have to have a conversation with the landlords, and, you know, so that there is going to have to be a bit on that going forward. But, you know, it's happened in HMOs. It's now happening in serviced accommodation. The next step's buy-to-lets. So, you know, the conversation with the landlord's going to be like, you know, this is coming for you anyway. So, you know, you might as well, let's do a deal and try and, you know, club together and make it work for us both. So, because buy-to-lets is 100% going to be the next thing that will happen. And, you know, rightly so. Like, at the end of the day, like I was in Miami last year, and I woke up to a text message off my brother saying one of the flats in Durham had burnt down. That's all I had. Cheverley's burnt down last night. Fire brigade, everything out. Obviously, I'm like, what am I, 5 hours behind? I can't remember. But I woke up and just like instant panic. I was like, fuck, like, has anyone died? How am I insured? What's the damage? You know, so instantly trying to ring people, get on the phone, and all these thoughts are going through your head, and the stress, and you know, and the first thing you do think it's not so much the money as it is the person still alive. They got out okay, you know. And so, you know, it is important that we are, you know, protecting people. If we're wanting to make money out of these places, we've also got to make sure that they are safe. You know, and I think that comes as a priority. And if you don't, then it is your head that, you know, for negligence you can go to jail. So, you know, you do need to be very mindful of it. But it shouldn't scare people off. But again, I talked about it earlier with the kind of influx. This will be another thing that will see a lot of people disappear. So supply will drop again now, because a lot of people won't do it, or, you know, a lot of people will try and do it on the cheap, or they'll just think, oh, I'm not going to bother doing it. But I guarantee you, this will be the first thing that the council starts sticking their neck into as soon as it's like official, and start wanting to see your fire risk assessments. I know fine well Gateshead Council will come after me, because they come after me for everything. We've just been on their radar for years, and, you know, whether it's noise or whether it's bins, or, you know, we've just, I don't know, there's someone there that's just got it in for us. We don't in Newcastle, we don't in Durham, Sunderland, but like Newcastle, Gateshead, they just love to have a go at us. So we'll get it all in order, and then we just tick the box and, you know, keep them quiet, and that's that. So, but it's there for everyone's benefit, I think. Not just it's not just an expense, but for those professional operators, it should benefit us, because again, it'll wash out a lot of supply, which means the demand comes back into our properties, the rates go up, we make more profit. Any more questions? Oh, hold on, might have a couple more. In terms of getting long-term bookings, have you had any success with any specific platform? Yeah. I think you need to get on as many platforms as you can. Try everything. But I think again, I think direct bookings, a lot of people think there's like a magic website or a magic company that brings you loads of workers. I think things like Comfy Workers and stuff you've got to pay to be on, which I don't do. But for me, if you've got your properties, if you've got the right properties that attract direct bookings, not tourism stuff's mainly going to come through Airbnb and Booking.com. You know, like I've booked, I don't know, I've probably been on 6-7 holidays this year. Every single time I go on Booking.com. Yeah, and I booked my villa in Spain when I went with the kids at summer from Airbnb. Like I not once have thought, oh, I'll go on a direct booking website. You know, even though I know that it's probably cheaper because, you know, I'm in the game and I know how it works. But it's just ease, you know, everything's on the app, it's all stored there, all my details are there, you know. So I think direct bookings, if I analyze, well, I do this. So obviously we manage for, you know, other landlords. So I have no real say over kind of what type of properties come in. I mean, we do because we have brand standards, so we won't take on certain things. But, you know, my model's not the lower end stock for my own stuff, but we will manage the lower number of unit stock. So I can see from the data that does not attract as many direct bookings as the type of stock that I've got. So it shows you that, you know, depending on the type of stock, will naturally attract, you know, more direct bookings than other types of property. So, you know, it's all well and good sticking a studio apartment in London on open rent, for example, to try and get direct bookings. But is that going to have as much success as a larger property that's going to attract contractors? You know, probably not. So, you know, it is understanding what works and what doesn't work for your strategy, your avatar, and then going from there. And I also think your long-term bookings come from building relationships. And again, it's like investors, they don't happen overnight, and also building your brand. So I know, like, our brand is well known in the Northeast for, you know, housing contractors. You know, so in Dubai, we're known for housing expats relocating. So, you know, we tend to get those inquiries from either agencies, or they come direct through the website because of the SEO work that we've done over the years. Or, you know, out here we get real estate agents just ringing us up and saying, you know, I've got an expat moving over, or a company, you know, a recruitment person in certain companies ringing us up. So, but that's because we've built the brand and we've echoed the message of what we do, and we've niched down, rather than trying to be somebody to everybody. So I think that's more important than trying to get a quick win of a direct booking off a Gumtree website or this website. I think direct bookings is a long-term game. You just chip away at it, and, you know, each year you want to just get less and less reliant on the OTAs. Like when I started, obviously 100% reliant on the OTAs, you know, then after probably 6 months, you're probably picking up maybe 5-10% direct bookings. After year one, you probably go to about 20% direct bookings. As long as you're following up, you're retargeting, you're collecting information, you're sending out valuable content, you know, and you've got a strategy around it. If you just allow your customer to go back to the booking site, you're always going to lose them. And then over time, and as I said, like now the portfolio stands, last time I checked last month, the owned was 76.7, I think it was, and the rent to rent was about 74.3, I think it was. So, you know, that's year to date 2023 direct bookings. So it just shows you like where it's come. But there's been a lot of investment into that in terms of, you know, marketing time, knowledge, effort, and everything in between, and a plan. You know, from day one, we've had a plan. It's not just been, oh, I'll advertise on Gumtree for a couple of months and just see if I can pick something up. There's been a plan, and the plan is there, and it's consistent. So it gets us to where we need to be. So hopefully that helps. Does become yes, it does. So you do need to change your use. There is a new use class coming in for short-term rentals, which I'm not sure if it's in yet. I know it was being proposed in Parliament a few months ago. I don't think I've seen anything saying it's official yet. But I know we have had a few properties we have had to change the use class on, and they went sui generis. But there is going to be a specific short-term rental use class, which will actually work again in our favor, because I'll pay the money, we'll get the use class, we'll, got no problem. Whereas for a lot of people, they won't pay the money, they'll get caught out, they'll get fined, they'll stop operating. So again, that's just going to reduce the supply. So for the professional operators still in the game, it's a good thing. Righty ho, I am off to bed. So obviously it is a bit later for me here. But thanks again for your time. For those, I think everyone's pretty much in the community now, and it's building very nicely, how I wanted it to be. It's I'm aiming to get that into the thousands, so it does become a very buoyant community. There's been some good conversations in there as well. VIP community as well is building nicely, we get on more calls, and there's a bit more coaching in there. As I said earlier in the call, if you do want to explore that avenue, invest in yourself and kind of speed things up, then just drop me a DM on one of the platforms, and keep your eye peeled in the community for the next call, which will probably be in about a month's time. Good luck with your journeys, and hopefully tonight's helped, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Take care, everyone. Bye.